Hello, I'm back. I know you're wondering where my hair went. Don't worry, it's still there. It's just a lot shorter. It got extremely hot here in Michigan, so I had to have it shaved off the top of my head. And now you can see how large my forehead is. Not a lot going on in the case of news or anything. Obviously, players were suspended from the league, one of them being Jameson Williams, which I know you guys want me to talk about the other people too. Basically, all I can say is the people who were suspended, and most of them have been cut from the teams they were on, are complete morons. How hard is it to not gamble on NFL games? The only reason I have a problem with Jameson Williams is because, one, it was in the facility, it had nothing to do with football, he was betting on March Madness. Who cares? Especially when you consider the fact that I'm pretty sure Detroit is sponsored by MGM, and because there's an MGM casino downtown. And the rest of the league's sponsored by like 3 different casinos. Why would you care that they're gambling? I get when you say it's during the season, they're gambling on games, that's no go. Sure thing. No problem. Not going to hear much of an argument from me, simply because, yeah, you could. I don't think that it can happen per se, but I understand the argument that there's bias and that you could have a buddy that's on the team that could tank the game. I followed the thought. I disagree with you and fundamentally with how that works, but I get why. If it's a playoff game, that's probably not going to happen. But, pointless regular. I always said this when I was asked this about. When I was asked by a couple of people what had happened. It's the equivalent of, remember when Detroit and the Packers used to play each other and we'd see Matt Flynn because if they lost, who cared? Because the Packers had a lock on the NFC North. It's that, where you go, well, they could throw a game and then you won money because they threw a game. That I could see being a problem. Now, of course, someone tried to say that they tried this during the playoffs or something. Yeah, I doubt they're going to try and throw a playoff game. But I see where the argument is made that you could know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. Sorry. That's an old one. And you could then screw up the game and cause your friend to win while your team loses. You can throw it, etc. Fine. No arguments. My problem with Jameson Williams was he was betting on March Madness. Now, I'll give you a caveat that I'll say I would agree with the league's decision. If his brother played for Portland State or somebody who was in the tournament, I don't know who was in the tournament off the top of my head. Gonzaga. There, I'll pick a team that's always there. Gonzaga. Let's say his brother played for Gonzaga and he went, hey, if you were to lose, I would win a lot of money. Not that he needs it. He's a rookie of the NFL. Well, now he's a 1-year player, but he's NFL contract. Pretty sure he's fine. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that he had done that. And boom, they throw the game. He wins $30K or some insane number, and ta-da. Then I'd be with you on, no, that should be illegal. My problem is, he was betting on March Madness at the facility, not during the season, because we don't play in March. Question. Isn't that what you want the kids to be doing? Instead of getting in trouble? Be at the facility, working out, doing your thing, figuring out what you're... As a fan of the game, I say kudos to the young man. He's where he should be. You should be at the facility, working out, working on tape, working routes, whatever it is you're doing. It depends on what the rules are. I'm more familiar with college than I am the NFL when it comes to off-season workouts. That would be a kudos from me to the player, right? That's what you should be doing. You should be at the facility. You should be doing whatever it is you're doing. Working out is what I believe he claimed he was doing. Again, I don't know. Wasn't there. But as a fan of the game, I would say, good for you. You're staying out of trouble. This is what you're doing. Good. Now, the league's issue is he was gambling on team grounds, which is against the rules because you can't gamble inside the facility, which I can't help but laugh at. You guys are sponsored by, 4 different casinos? I say that because I'm including the betting services because they're basically a casino. You couldn't influence the outcome. Why do you care? That's just where I stand on it. Anyway, I'm done ranting about this. I think it's ridiculous. Whatever. He's suspended for half the year. Fine. However, I will say this. Since I've been gone, and now I'm back, they have released the schedule. Now, I believe at the time I was talking about how they were going to release the schedule, and who cares? I've talked about it at some point. They made such a big deal of the schedule release. I mean, it's not college, so who honestly cares? I had to edit myself there. I almost said something else. If you know me very well, you'll know what I wanted to say. I think it's ridiculous. Come on now. Oh, the schedule release. Woo. Well, I live in Michigan, so typically I watch Detroit. I don't really care for the NFL. If I were a fan of any team, it would be the Rams. That's because I've been a Rams fan since the early 2000s. Actually, before that, I was a fan of them when they were still Los Angeles. I was a fan of Kurt Warner. I have a Marshall Faulk jersey from when I was a kid. I didn't make that up. I really have a Marshall Faulk jersey. Which was my point to other people when the Rams won, was I've been a Rams fan for forever. I don't really care for the NFL as much as college. To be perfectly honest with you, if I had a significant other that said you had to pick one, I would pick college all day. 1, the games matter more. 2, it's better. By a mile. I watch the NFL. I enjoy the NFL. I love college football. I mean, I'm wearing a Notre Dame shirt as I speak. But anyway. What was I going to say? I totally forgot. Anyway, the schedule released, and in the case of Detroit, they tried to make it a big deal, and we can't help but laugh because, first of all, it's Detroit. Secondly, I already have half the schedule figured out. You play Chicago twice, Green Bay twice, Minnesota twice. There you go. That's almost half, actually, because now it's not 16 games or 16 weeks. It's now 17. Anyway, there's 6 of them. They open against the Chiefs. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say the NFL is screwing Detroit with their pants on, but I think it's funny that you hear from people and they say, oh, Detroit has this chance to beat the Chiefs week 1. Well, I'm going to argue with you that, yeah, anybody has a chance to beat them in the first couple of weeks because that's usually when big teams are not so great. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I'll be pleasantly surprised if it does, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that they're going to get shellacked. It'll be funny for a minute. Then it'll get sad. It'll be funny if... Here's when it would be funny. If it's like 17-14 with 4.5 minutes to go and Mahomes goes back-to-back touchdowns and it's now 24-17. That would be funny. Right? Because you go, that's how Detroit would lose. Right? Like last year I made the joke to my sister, whom I live with. Came down here, was talking to her for a minute, and she's like, oh, isn't Detroit playing? I'm like, yeah, but doesn't really matter. Why not? It's halftime and it's 21-0. Oh, so they're winning, which means they're going to lose because they have no idea what to do and they have the lead. They lost 28-21. I'm not kidding. Or 24. I think it was 28-24. I think they got a field goal late in like the third quarter. But otherwise, couldn't move the ball. That's what happens. It's Detroit. In the case of the Rams, yeah, I know they had a bad year. Stafford, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. By the way, can we at least laugh a little bit about the Baker Mayfield experiment that they tried? Did anyone seriously think that was going to go well? Let's be honest here. Baker is Johnny Manziel 2.0. And now he's with Tampa Bay, and Tampa is trying to do their usual talking nonsense about how we're going to be dominant again. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever watched Baker Mayfield play, but mediocre is his absolute, just absolute ceiling. Being mediocre. Being piss poor is his floor. That's it. There is no, he's fine. It's, waiting for the other shoe to drop, or, oh yeah, that's right, you suck. It's one of the two. Always. And I'm not kidding. He had 1 year where you went, wow, and that's it. No, really. 1 year with Cleveland where you went, wow, good job. That was it. Otherwise, it's been mostly meh. There's a couple of quarterbacks I can say that about your careers where you go, sorry, now it's just kind of eh. Phil Rivers near the end, sorry, you were pretty solid for a lot of years when you shouldn't have been. And then it kind of just, it got to the point, much like with, I'll throw Peyton and Eli in there, where you go, you're kind of the reason your team's losing now. You should probably retire. Peyton's problem was his arm went. Once he couldn't get velocity on the ball, it's time to call it a career. Now, in the case of Tom Brady, who, of course, also had that problem, started to, you could see that he wasn't able to get the same jump, if you will, out of the hand. I thought he should have stayed retired, mostly because he's a scumbag, and I don't like him. And people say that I don't like him because he won all the time. But it's a two-pronged thing. On one hand, he is a scumbag. He took PPP loans when he didn't need to buy a private jet. I'm not kidding. He openly cheated during games, and it's really obvious, including destroying his phone, which, how does he not get suspended for that? Whatever. But here's the other one, and it's the one that a lot of people I get a lot of crap from other people. The best thing about him retiring was, for 6 months, they covered the fact that he retired. Unfortunately, he then came back out of retirement. But it was nice because it was like, cool, once the season starts, you people are actually going to have to do your jobs. Like, talking about someone other than him. And then he came back, and that didn't happen, which is a real shame. I'm hoping this time he gets hit by a car or something where he can't come back. Like a serious injury where coming back is not even physically possible. Not that I think that would stop him, just saying. I don't want him to no longer exist. I just want him to, blow his leg out so that he can't come back. Because, for the love of God, retire. And stay there. There's only one QB that is retired in the... Well, two. I was thinking of one off the top of my head, then the second one popped in my head after that. Where there have been rumblings about they might come back, where I said, oh, cool. Drew Brees and Andy Luck. Andrew. Sorry, not Andy. My brain thought of somebody else. Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck. Why do I want Andrew Luck to come back? Despite the fact that he went to Stanford. I do like him. He's a really likable guy. He's got a pretty solid arm still. He's got a weird throwing motion, but he can still throw it. And I was always like, well, cool, once he recovers from the injuries, because that was really the main reason he retired, is he was just beat up. Which happens. Don't believe me? Look at Matt Stafford. But there have been rumblings that he might come back. He actually, I believe it was either him or someone close to him, one of the two, eventually released a statement, and they're like, it's not going to happen. But one of those where you go, if he announced he was coming back, hey, cool. Now, Drew Brees. My thing with Drew Brees wasn't I wanted him to come back and play. It was more that I want him to come back and be a backup. One of those where I comp it to a Warren Moon situation. Come back and just tell everybody, I'm cool with being the backup. That's fine. And teach. Or come in as a coach. I'd love to see him coaching. As a QB coach or an offensive coordinator. Maybe he can do some work with the Palmers. I mean, Jordan's done a hell of a job being just a QB guy. As much as I didn't care for Jordan as a QB. You go, you know what? He's got the knowledge up here. He just never had the... He wasn't Carson. Carson Palmer could burn you. Jordan Palmer, not so much. He has it up here, though, and that's something that you can't teach, right? The guy that can just sit there and tell you, hey, this is what you're doing wrong, here's how you do it, here's what you do with this. And, I mean, he's just a very intellectual guy. So I've always thought that he should sign the team. He hasn't, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing means he's actually helping out the kids that are going to be coming into the draft and eventually into the league. Bad thing, there's not some, struggling team that can go, we'll just hire you and fix our problems, because he's openly said he's not interested. Which is weird. It's weird that was his statement. Not, I haven't found a team that really wants me that badly and I'm happy doing what I'm doing, so, no, his statement was, I'm not interested. which was weird. But anyway, I could see Drew doing something like that. I'd love to see him back on the sidelines because despite what people may think of his later play, I've always liked Drew Brees. He's a very easy to like guy. He's just a genuine person. Same thing with like Phil Rivers. How can you hate Phillip Rivers? I think he's nuts, and I think that he's got a screw loose. But other than that, because he's got 9 freaking kids, it's something like that, 9 or 19. I don't know. He's got a lot of them because he's religious and nutty. But never heard a bad thing said about the guy. Very friendly, very polite, hilarious trash talker because he doesn't curse, which is funny. It's not that he won't, it's that he doesn't. I believe that's how one of the people I was listening to talk about him said once. Something about it's not that he can't, it's that he doesn't. But it's funny. Yeah. Speaking of football, I watched the USFL's championship game 2 days ago. I didn't know it was the championship game. Peacock had it, and I was like, cool, whoever. And then they were like, this is the championship game. And I was like, oh, all right, fine, I'll watch this. Can I just say, Magoo, I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. It's spelled more like McGuff, but I've been told that it's Magoo. Anyway, how is he not in the NFL? Like, I watched him play and went, how does someone not go? Like, when Lamar Jackson went down, how did the Ravens not call you and go, you kind of run our offense. Why don't you sit on the sidelines and be the backup? Because if, you continue to lose with Huntley, who I like, you can put Magoo in there and he can run your offense the same exact way. A little more pass heavy, I would say, but he can do it. Hoping that what he did this past year can get some NFL considerations, because, I mean, holy cow, can that kid, he can light people up, score-wise, and another guy I would believe if you told me he had a screw loose. He's kind of odd. But, I mean, dude can play. Am I saying that about a lot of the guys that are in there? No. I mean, look at the Michigan Panthers, wherever they played. You can just get rid of that team and no one would know they were missing. Not only because it's the USFL and nobody watched it, but two, oh my God, are they terrible. They made a big deal here that, oh my goodness, they made the playoffs. And I couldn't help but audibly laugh. That team is terrible. And I watched a couple games. And both times I watched, you guys couldn't find the end zone with a GPS. It was field goal, punt, 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 field goal, punt, punt, punt. And you lost 24-6. Because your defense wasn't stopping anybody. It was just hilarious. Kind of like Pittsburgh. How they could get into field goal range, but they couldn't get in the end zone. Which was weird after a minute. Because you're like, you really haven't figured out that, hey, they're playing some pretty tight zone defense here and here, and they go man on this play. So maybe what we should do is, I don't know, come up with a concept. I know I'm asking so much of these coaches because none of them are very good. Maybe we should come up with some concepts that, well, I don't know, get more than one person open. It was like watching Detroit circa Schwartz. 3rd and 6, and they throw a 60-yard bomb. And you're going, the hell are you doing? Oh, well, we thought we could get more yards. And you're like, you needed 6. I'm all for having a guy that just goes down the field and goes, see if that guy gets open. But you needed 6. 2nd and 6, feel free to do that. 3rd and 6, you need 6 yards. Actually, Pittsburgh did that. It was second. They got it, I think. It was like 4th and 3, and they're going for it. And they threw like 30 yards, and I think the guy, the play I'm thinking of, because they did a couple times, caught it. And you just kind of started laughing. You're like, that looked like Detroit. Detroit used to do that. They've kind of stopped now, thank God. But, oh yeah, it's, 4th and a yard. And you're like, cool, you're going to put in a fullback or a tight end or somebody in the backfield, and you're going to run up the middle or run a sneak or something for, a yard. Nope. We're going to throw a 38-yard bomb down the middle of the field, and it'll go incomplete. Why were you throwing it that far? Well, that guy we thought was open. You needed a yard. Why? I'm all for, like I said, shift a guy that way to get somebody to slide out of that spot. But when you have vertical, deep post, you're not helping anybody. We don't know how no one got open. Well, you put 3 receivers on the field and 1 running back, and the running back didn't go out in a formation to pass it at all, except turning around after 2 yards and standing way behind the line of scrimmage. There's a reason why that didn't work. Or when we had Reggie Bush and they did the same thing. We threw a screen pass to Reggie Bush when we needed 6 yards, and we can't believe that they only gained a yard. Oh, you're stunned by that? Could it be because no one blocked and Reggie Bush isn't that fast anymore? I mean, he's still quick-footed, but he wasn't Saints. That's what they expected, I think, when he got here, was that he's going to be the Saints Reggie Bush, and he's going to be able to run for 1,000 yards. No, he's not. He's not that guy anymore. That happens a lot. Don't believe me? Ask the Cardinals. They have a little knowledge with that. Who, by the way, I watched their Hard Knocks season finally. Oh my God, was that team run horribly? No wonder he got fired. I was asking that question with like 7 games to go. I'm like, how have you not fired your coach yet? We're only on a 4-game slide. It will be fine. They didn't win another game after that, by the way. And you're like, okay, you've lost 4 out of the last 5. Right. How are you losing these games, though? Oh, you don't know what you're doing. Now, I could have told you that based on what he did in college, but just watching weird plays and Kyler Murray, a.k.a. the angry toddler, running around in circles while not making a play. You're like, this is the thing that I think is holding him back from being a good quarterback. I get that you're an amazing athlete. I get that you run insanely fast. But you're not Fran Tarkington. I know, old reference. And so stop trying to roll around in the backfield and get things open. If it's not open, you're fast. Go upfield. Stop running around in the backfield. And he does run like an angry toddler, by the way. That's why I call him that. Just... Or, as I saw more than once in the film that they show on that, Hard Knocks, and it's also on his film in general when you watch him, in not so much in college, but definitely in the pros. You rolled out of the pocket, and I give you props because everybody says, option quarterback, really fast in college, all he's going to do is run around. Right? That's all he's not going to throw the ball, he's just going to take off. And you've done a good job of keeping your eyes downfield the last couple years, which I give you props for. Herein lies the problem. You don't know when to throw it away. And he's just staring. You're like, just throw the ball out of bounds. No one's open. There's a guy coming at you downfield who's just as fast as you. Just throw it away. You're out of the box. Just get it past the line of scrimmage, out of bounds, and go, nobody was open, man. Because now I know Cliff Kingsbury's an idiot, so he'll argue with you, but as a coach, I would tell you, I understand why you threw it away and no one was open. I'd rather take that than you getting sacked and injured. Just throw it away. Of course, I also would probably have better play calls than Cliff Kingsbury because, your entire strategy being just throw to Hopkins is probably not a great one. That was his entire strategy, by the way. Oh, we'll just run Hopkins in the middle and you just throw it to him. Oh, he's covered? I don't know what to do then, man. Figure it out. But, anyway. Watching J.J. Watt retire was gut-wrenching. Because, again, a guy that how can you dislike him? But, anyway, it was a really good series, really well done. I'm going to remain with my original argument about that, which was you opened up with Detroit that year. Why couldn't you have stayed with Detroit? Now, I'm going to make the argument this year that if Hard Knocks ends up picking Detroit again, because we are in the running, funny enough, I will say this. You should pick Detroit again because everybody liked it. And instead of leaving and coming back in week 6 and going, we've decided, no, just stay with the team all year. Just do that from now on. Whatever team you pick, we're with them all year. We get to show you how they got better, blah, 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 blah. Because, 1, that would be great television. 2, it would make the show worth watching because a lot of the times you're like, cool, I saw that guy go all the way through training camp and then he made it on the team. Congratulations. And then you're watching week 9 against that team going, where's that guy? Oh, it turns out he got cut because actually he probably shouldn't have made it past roster cuts. And then, of course, because of the Cardinals Hard Knocks series, we got to see a guy that I didn't think Detroit should have cut at all and should have been playing when Goff wasn't playing in the preseason, which is David Blau. Why Detroit cut him, I don't know. That's an honest head-scratcher, because the guy you picked up to replace him, Sudsy, is bad. No offense to Nate Sudfeld, but there needs to be an argument where you go, David Blau actually can make plays. You don't. Similar with the guy he was replaced by, I can't think of his name right this second, where he was just bad. And it was laughable. The kid from, he played with the Packers a couple years before that. I can't think of his name right now. Somebody will remind me later, and then I'll know. But after the first preseason game, I went, what exactly do you do? Well, I'm not very athletic, so I can't run. Ditto to that, I have the same problem. I can run short distances, but don't ask me to go anywhere because I'm not outrunning anybody. If a zombie apocalypse comes and I can't stay in my house and stay safe, I'm not running. It's not happening. Not getting very far. I walk briskly, and that's about as fast as it goes. But if we have 28 days later zombies that can sprint, I'm screwed. Me and a lot of other people. But essentially, that's what you had at quarterback. Guy that's not very good at running. Oh, okay, well then you must have amazing intellect and a good arm. Nope. Doesn't have that either. Now, I'm not saying that Blau has it all up here, but he at least could explain when things went wrong. It wasn't just, man, I don't know what happened. It was, well, I thought you were running outside towards the sidelines on the up and out. You go upfield and then boop, cut straight to the sideline. That's why I put it out here. And instead, you kind of kept going towards the sideline like a fade route. Okay, that got explained. Thank you for explaining that. I understand what went wrong. Let's yell at the receiver because he's the one that screwed up. Right? That, well, not yell, but, get dialogue. The other guy just kind of stood there and was like, man, I don't know what happened. Could you try and figure it out? No. I don't understand why you stayed on the team that long. I'd have cut him after the second preseason game and gone, look, dude, you are awful. Do yourself a favor and either sign with the Rams or the Falcons or somebody where you know you're not going to play and win the Super Bowl that way, a la David Carr, where you went, you're not playing. Unless something catastrophic goes wrong, you're not playing. Eli's got this. But yeah, anyway. They cut David Blau after he made it through the preseason, made it past the cuts, and then I think it was week 2, cut him. Which I still have, like I said, a head-scratcher about because I thought that he was at least a comparable quarterback. Then I want him, leading the team? No. But, hey, if we're up by a significant number and we're going to try and get the backup some time, by all means, throw David Blau in there. Or, Goff went down, hard hit, he's, we're going to stay on the side of caution. Then by all means, throw David Blau in there. I thought he was fine. Again, was he some amazing quarterback that could challenge Jared Goff? No. But he's a fine backup. He's good at being a backup. I mean, look at McCoy. He's not a starter, but he's a pretty solid backup. Anyway. Sorry, I had to step away for a second. I needed to get something to moisten my vocal cords. I tried pouring water directly into them. Apparently, they're not supposed to do that, so that's a joke. Anyway, obviously, things are going on in college football. I recently saw a new update on the game that's supposed to come out, allegedly, this year. I have no hope. I mean, even if it does come out, we know it's going to be an abomination because Electronic Arts is just going to find a way to throw it in the dumpster. It's what they do. But anyway, that's supposed to come out. Not a lot's going on in college football. I'm very excited for, I believe it's week 4, Notre Dame and Ohio State. It should be a very good game. They're going to be at Notre Dame. Couple things. First of all, I could never in 10 lifetimes afford to go to that game. Secondly, it's already sold out, so even if I wanted to. it's either the day before or the day after my birthday, which we're not going to tell you what number that is because, whew, is that scary. We're not at a round number yet, but that's coming. It's coming quickly. It's staring us in the face, and it's alarming. I'll just tell you, I'm turning 29. Yeah, 30 is right there. That's a scary thought. Oh boy. Oh jeez. Anyway, I thought I would treat myself and go to that game because I was like, hey, that'd be cool. Until I saw the ticket prices and went, sweet Jesus, that's not happening. Because it's not. Oh look, for $360 you can be all the way at the top of the stadium where these are going to be dots. Yeah, nah, I'm good. I'll just stay home. That's my stance on most football games, actually. Don't you want to go to watch Detroit? I mean, so I did. I went to a Detroit game, so I could say that I've been to very, very small Ford Field, and I watched Detroit beat the Packers. Other than that, I have no interest in going back. Why? I had seats in the end zone, which are cool. Herein lies the problem. You know what happens when they get to the 40-yard line? You can't see anything. You're staring at dots. And you're like, cool, I have no idea who he handed off to. Now I'm looking at this giant screen watching the play happen going, I could be watching this at my house at this rate. And I could pee whenever I want to. Of course, at that point I was going through dialysis, so I mean, I wasn't peeing. But, I could do that. Or, I could just get snacks. Because I already paid for them. In my house. Anyway. It's just overall. Not worth it. The only time I think it would be worth it is if you went to maybe, is it AT&T Stadium or whatever they call it? Jerry World. Where the Cowgirls play. And that's because that screen stretches from the 30-yard line to the 30-yard line. So if you're sitting in the middle, you don't have to look at what's going on. Just look up. I'd make the same argument that I could do the same thing at my house. But it's not like MMA, where MMA, you want to be up. You want to be up so you're looking down into the octagon. And then when they go to the ground, that's when you look up. But you can see everything. It's one of the few things where you're like, no, you don't want to be down, you want to be up. Well, if you're down, you're looking over people, and you're looking through the cage and you can't see. You want to be up, so you're looking down. Also because those seats, if I could speak, those seats are usually cheaper. I tried to combine those two words, and we came out with cheats. We're not talking about the Patriots. Oh, I'm sorry, sore subject, I'm sure. Or Tom Brady. I try my best not to talk about him because ESPN and the NFL Network and NFL whoever and every other freaking sports person will beat me to it because I don't talk about him. I mentioned Eli Manning earlier. I would like to point out that I still think they made a huge mistake. They signed Daniel Jones to an exorbitant amount of money and then franchise tagged Saquon Barkley. I know I mentioned this already the last time I was here. I think that you guys made a mistake. That should have been flip-flopped. You should have signed Saquon and franchised Daniel Jones. By franchising Daniel Jones, you then tell him, hey, you get 1 year, buddy. Because last year you did quite a bit. Happily, I'm not a Giants fan, but if I were, you'd be happy with the result that you mostly got. Would have liked to win a few more games, but you go, hey, he did quite a bit with nothing. What happens when we give him some weapons, which you kind of did? I say kinda because we kind of didn't also. Well, what you get is a lot of crap. Anyway, I thought they should have just franchise tagged him instead of signing him, but I digress. Let me see if I can do this without it crashing. I will recap. It worked. The NFL draft. Let me see real quick. NFL draft tracker. Ta-da! There. Boop. Avoid ESPN like the plague, especially since they just fired a bunch of people because they're stupid. Oh, so I said moisten my vocal cords because I thought I'd sound really old if I said wet my whistle. Thought I'd age myself by quite a while if I said that. Because I am old. And before anyone says, 29 is not that old, existentially, yes it is. No, where's the volume button? Ah! Stupid ads. Here, vodka. Cool, I don't drink, so I'm not interested. Okay. Arizona, who's going to be in a world of hurt next year. They picked up Paris Johnson in the first round, B.J. Ojolari, Garrett Williams. Those are offensive tackle, edge, and corner from Ohio State, LSU, and then Syracuse. We're not going to go over the trades they made. They're very confusing. Then they got Michael Wilson from Stanford, who is actually, I think, a very good move. They then got John Gaines, the second guard out of UCLA. That's a trade with like 5 teams. That's why it gets confusing. They then got Clayton Tune, which is a weird pick. For me, I think it's weird. He doesn't really fit what you're doing. But whatever. Owen, I'm going to mess up his name. Is it Papio? He's from Auburn. Keitrell Clark, corner from Louisville, and Dante Stills. I will say the Dante Stills pick, love it. Very underrated guy who tore it up at West Virginia, despite the fact that he played at West Virginia. But I think that was a very valuable move. I also like Keitrell Clark quite a bit. Not the tallest guy, but speed. John Gaines, that was a pretty decent pick. I didn't mind that one. Again, very solid guard out of UCLA. Let's see. Arizona, we now go to Atlanta. Where I'm sure I'm going to get another ad. Their first pick, not in love with it, but I also don't hate it. They got Bijan Robinson. Then they picked up Matt Bergeron from Syracuse. Third round, Zach Harrison, defensive end from Ohio State. I actually really liked that pick for them because they desperately need help on the defense. Then you got Clark Phillips III, defensive back from Utah. I also really like that pick in the 4th round, simply because he's a very solid. I probably put him at corner. I'll understand if they move him to safety. But very, very sturdy defensive back, and he definitely helps you deflect balls. Now here's where it gets weird, because I just said that pick was in the 4th round. Their next pick wasn't until the 7th, where they got DeMarco Hellams. I'm not as big of a fan of DeMarco Hellams' pick because I don't think he really did anything at Alabama. But, if nothing else, that's a really solid special teams guy, and he might even play a little bit of that hybrid linebacker. I'll use a Notre Dame term that I know is being used a lot in the NFL to define this, but that rover position where he's a safety / linebacker, because he does have some size to him. And then they got Javon Gwynn, offensive lineman from South Carolina. Baltimore, as usual, did pretty well, actually, I think, in the draft. Their first pick was Zay Flowers, wide receiver out of Boston College. Now, I know that he is a shorter player. He's not real tall. He's 5'9", I believe. And a lot of people want to give him crap and give the team crap because of what they did. I think that that's a huge move in the right direction because lately most of their receivers have been bad. And I think he can run some of those reverses and kind of those trick plays with a receiver that I'm sure Lamar Jackson and that offense would like to be able to do. Their next pick wasn't until the 3rd round where they got Trenton Simpson, linebacker out of Clemson. He is a very big linebacker. I'm not the hugest fan of Simpson simply because I think that he's got a few nicks on his play chart, if you will. He does a couple of things not great. But I think he's got a lot of potential. He's just raw. Their next pick was in the 4th round. They got Tavius Robinson, edge from Mississippi. Their next pick was in the 5th round. They got Kai Blue Kelly, corner from Stanford. I actually like that pick quite a bit. I think he'll probably play a little bit of a nickel position for now. Their next two picks were both offensive linemen in round 6 and 7. They got. Give me a second. Malasala Amave Laulu? I think it's Laulu. Offensive tackle from Oregon. I said this once, I'll say it again. Samoan guys, could you please get a nickname? Because some of your names are nightmares. And then in the 7th round, they got Andrew Voorhees, who I thought would go a lot higher, despite the fact that he played at the University of... can't say those two words. It's an S and a C. But he blew out... I didn't know this. He tore up his knee at the combine. How I missed that, I don't know. I wasn't really watching at that point. The O-lineman, I kind of only care about like 3 drills. The 40 times obviously are irrelevant. I always think it's funny when they try and do that. They're like, oh, this guy ran. You're like, he's an offensive lineman. Don't be stunned. He didn't run that fast. He's an offensive lineman. Now we go to the Bills, who actually, I liked their draft class quite a bit. They started with Dalton Kincaid, tight end. I thought that was a little bit of a strange pick. But overall, I do like Dalton Kincaid. I still value Michael Mayer above him. And it's not a bias thing. I think that he's your more inline blocking tight end. And if they really want to try to run the ball like they claim they did, that would have helped you more. But Dalton Kincaid is a really good receiver. And he's got some more speed than Michael Mayer does. The next pick in the 2nd round, I'm a huge fan of. That was Osiris Torrance, guard from Florida. I actually had a first-round grade on Osiris Torrance. I had him going... On my big board, I had him going, I believe, 17th or 18th. I think I had him going as high as 10 and going as low as, 18. And they got him in the 2nd round, 59th overall, which is incredible. Their next pick... I know a lot of people didn't care for it. I love it. Dorian Williams, if I could read. Linebacker from Tulane. I love Dorian Williams. The dude can blitz from anywhere. He's solid in coverage, needs a little work on it, but very, very good at getting after the quarterback, getting after the run game. Don't believe me? I'll just tell you one game to watch, and that's USC versus Tulane, where he had 15 tackles for loss by himself. And I want to say he had 2 or 3 sacks that game. Their next pick was in the 5th round. They took Justin Shorter, wide receiver from Florida. I like the pick because he's got some size to him. Justin Shorter, despite his last name, is 6'3", 6'4". He's got really good hands. I'd like to see him be kind of that slot weapon, that hybrid slot, meaning you put him in the slot, but you can then move him around. And it maybe even possibly be the replacement for Gabe Davis. The next pick was in the 7th round. They took Nick Broeker, guard from Mississippi, and then they took Alex Austin in the 7th round from Oregon State. For some reason, apparently a bunch of people had Gabe Davis valued way above what I would put him at, which was, I always thought he was just a very good receiver. For some reason, people wanted to put him at the top 15. I don't get that one. Carolina, who of course had traded with Chicago for the first overall pick, took Bryce Young, quarterback from Alabama. Their second pick, which was in the 2nd round, was Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver from Mississippi. I actually like that pick a lot more than some people do, because he is just a very dependable wide receiver, and in my opinion, underrated out of Ole Miss. Their 3rd round pick was DJ Johnson, edge from Oregon. Their 4th round pick was Chandler Zavala, guard from NC State. Their next pick was an interesting one, and I actually liked it a lot, despite some people not so much. And that was in round 5, they took Jamie Robinson, safety from Florida State. I think Jamie Robinson's underrated. He's a very solid safety, and he has a tendency to really play just at a high, high level. Now, he does have a little bit of... I don't want to call it bad tape, but where you go, ooh, that was a mistake, or that was a misstep. But the few missteps he has are, like I said, very few. He is, I trapped myself in my own sentence structure. He's very solid in getting downfield and protecting against the run, and he can cover. Probably a little better in zone than man, but a very solid cover guy. Now we go to Chicago, who traded back with, at least I'm pretty sure I'm on Chicago, right? Yes? No? Yes, the Bears. Sorry, I forgot to read what I clicked on before I got there. And they traded back a couple of times and ended up getting Darnell Wright, offensive tackle from Tennessee. Their second round pick, of which they had two, was Gervon Dexter Sr. I'm a big fan of him. I think that he's a very good run-stopping defensive tackle. In round 2, they got Tyreek Stevenson, corner from Miami. For those of you who don't know, or you're saying, hey, that name sounds familiar. Before that, he played at Oklahoma. In round 3, they got Zach Pickens, defensive tackle, South Carolina. In round 4, they got Rashawn Johnson, running back from Texas, who actually is a pretty solid running back. A lot of people wanted to, again, poo-poo on that pick. I don't think you should. I think he's very solid and a very well-rounded player. Had some very good quality games filling in for, sure, I just said his name. Now I can't think of it. The running back for Texas. I'm blanking on his name right now. The next pick was in round 4 with Tyler Scott, wide receiver for Cincinnati. Now, again, another one where people go, who's that? Well, if you watched any tape on him, you would not be asking who's that. You'd be going, oh my God, I can't believe you got him. He's got some pretty solid speed, and he has really, really good hands. Their next pick, round 5, was Noah Sewell, linebacker from Oregon. I like the pickup for Noah Sewell. He's pretty solid in coverage, but he's a really good blitzer as well. Round 5, they took Terrell Smith, corner from Minnesota. Their next pick was in the 7th round. They took Travis Bell, defensive tackle from Kennesaw State, getting some obvious depth at that position so you can have a healthy rotation. I like to think of what they're kind of trying to do is similar to what the Eagles were able to do last year, where they could just cycle in dudes, which is not a bad idea. And then they got Kendall Williamson from Stanford in the 7th round as well. He's a defensive back. He'll probably play, I would assume, safety. Either safety or nickel corner. Usually when it just says DB, it's safety or nickel corner. Now we go to the Cincinnati Bengals, who took Myles Murphy in the 1st round. Look, I'm not as high on Myles Murphy as everybody else. I understand why people wanted him going that high. Now, I don't think he uses his hands as well. Now, I say that. Do I think that means he can't eventually become useful with his hands and be able to pull people up, push and pull and get in the backfield? Not at all. You can learn that. But I have questions on why you took him, considering that you guys have an okay edge group as it is. Their second pick, despite the fact that he went to a certain university I don't care for, I loved. And that is, round 2, they took DJ Turner. Now you have to replace Eli Apple, who shouldn't have been on your team in the first place, and you have to get faster at corner. You did both of those things with DJ Turner. First of all, kid can fly. Secondly, he's got really, really good eye for the ball. And I think that is a very underrated pick. In round 3, they took Jordan Battle, safety from Alabama. Jordan Battle, of course, before that played at LSU. Very good safety. I think that that's another really solid choice in ensuring that your secondary can actually stuff and stop some of these big passing games, especially when you realize that you're going to have to play some teams that really like to throw the ball. The next pick was in the 4th round, and they picked Charlie Jones, wide receiver from Purdue. Charlie Jones is an underrated player that some people have heard of and some people haven't. I heard about 50-50 on that one. Charlie Jones basically catches everything thrown at him. And although he's not the biggest guy, and he's not the fastest guy, he can run a route. And I think that was a very solid choice for them, and can eventually mold him into a very good rotational guy at first, and then eventually get him to become arguably probably their slot receiver and number 3 or 4 on the depth chart. Their next pick, round 5, was Chase Brown, running back from Illinois. I also like that pick a lot. I love Chase Brown. I think that he is a really solid running back. Even if he came out of Illinois, which hasn't always had the greatest team, he was one of the guys that was always a standout. He and his brother were the top 2 standouts to me on the field pretty much any time they were playing. Round 6, they took Andre, I believe it's pronounced Iosevas, something like that. He is a wide receiver from Princeton. Not the tallest guy. I want to say he's 6'1.5", something like that. I'm not entirely sure on his height. Let me look that up. I want to say he's like 6'1". Hang on. It's loading. We'll get to it in a second. "6'3". Oh, I'm wrong. 6'3". That doesn't sound right. Maybe he's actually 6'2", and on here they have him as 6'3", because I want to say that it was one of those where I said originally that he was a different height, and then when they ran his stats, I was wrong, because I thought he was bigger. 6'3". Okay, so he's probably like actually 6'2.5", 6'3", somewhere in there. Anyway, a guy that, when again, you're not going to find a lot of tape on him. Princeton doesn't really release tape that much. But what you see at the Senior Bowl and what you see at the Combine are very similar. Now, why do I bother covering the Combine? Because you usually hear me tell you that the Combine is mostly pointless. And it is mostly pointless. But what I look for when it comes to receivers is, are you playing relatively the same as you're practicing, or in this case, showcasing, right? And what we saw is that he's got some wheels. He can burn you if he needs to. But 2, he very much focuses on catching the ball with his hands, which, again, you'll hear me say that for other guys as well. But that is something that is underrated, because so many other guys cannot catch with their hands, or they struggle with it. So they're better off if they can turn right at you and have it hit them in the body. That's fine if you can catch it with your body, but it's much better if you can see them reaching out with their hands and grabbing the ball. A lot less fumbles that way. Round 6, they took Brad Robbins, punter out of Michigan. And then in the 7th round, they took DJ Ivey, defensive back from Miami. I would assume that DJ Ivey is going to play the other field position, safety. One of those safeties is going to play boundary, and the other one's probably going to play field. I would assume that he plays the field. Or, sorry, the boundary. What that means is one's up against the sidelines, and the other guy plays like the middle of the field. And when they want to go with 3 safeties, which you can do, cover 3, you can have him probably, I would assume, again, probably stay closer to the sideline. And in that case, I would probably also move DJ Turner back to safety, if you will, when you run cover 3. That's 3 safeties. I put that in quotations because there's a lot of guys that play corner that get moved there. Next is the Browns. Cleveland Browns, who have been a dumpster fire organization for forever. They actually didn't have a pick until the 3rd round, and they took Cedric Tillman, wide receiver from Tennessee. I actually like that pick a lot. He is a burner. Dude can fly. The next pick in the 3rd round was Siaki Ika, defensive tackle from Baylor. I love him as a nose. He is a big, big dude. In round 4, they took DeJuan Jones, offensive tackle from Ohio State. Something they don't do too often, which is kind of weird considering the fact that you're in Cleveland, which is not that far from, well, the Ohio State campus in Columbus. The Bengals do that too. They don't take guys out of Ohio State. It's one of those where you just kind of have to laugh a little bit because you're like, it's right there. How did you not scout that guy? He's right there. Anyway, I like DeJuan Jones. I think that he's probably going to play, I would say within the first 3 weeks is probably when he starts playing. I would start him. Why do I say within the first 3 weeks? Because you go, I don't know if they have somebody already at that position. Last I checked, they had a tackle at his position that could play, but I think he's better off being the backup. Round 4, which is where they took DeJuan Jones, they had another 4th-round pick at 126. They take Isaiah McGuire, defensive end out of Missouri. I think that's a really solid pickup. Isaiah plays pretty well. Again, needs a little bit of work. But you desperately need somebody on the other side on your defensive line because, quite frankly, when you've only got one defensive end, it's pretty easy to double that guy, despite how great Myles Garrett is. If everybody knows that Myles Garrett's the guy that makes your defense run, which is pretty much how that works, they're just going to go, cool, we double him and we'll have a couple extra seconds to throw the ball. Well, now you got to deal with, oh my goodness, I have Siaka Ika over the nose. I have McGuire on one side and Garrett on the other. Now I have to think about this. Their 5th-round pick is actually the 5th overall pick in that, which would be, 5th pick in the 5th round, overall 140th. Is a pick that I personally love a lot, and I kind of hoped that Detroit would have done this, but they didn't. And then after that, I was kind of hoping that maybe Seattle would do it, and they didn't. And that's Dorian Thompson-Robinson, quarterback from UCLA. What I like about DTR is that he stays in the pocket. His earlier years, he was known as that runner, right? He was known as a dude who would take off. And as he got older and more mature, he figured out that, yes, I can beat you with my legs. Because he can. He's got some quickness. But I'm better off standing in the pocket and beating you with my arm. Because you're not going to win games with a guy that can run. Now, you hear me say that, and people will laugh. Yeah, in college you might, but at the pros, that's not how that works. You're not going to be able to just take off and run. Don't believe me? Ask any of the guys that's all they do. Thinking of the Johnny Manziels of the world. Yeah, how'd their careers go? Even before he was in trouble partying, he wasn't good at standing in the pocket and throwing the ball. You need to be able to do that at this level. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson can do that. DTR has a very good arm. And I think that when it comes to, obviously, Deshaun Watson is going to be your starting quarterback. I don't know why. And then DTR probably, I would put him at the backup position or 3rd stringer for now. But eventually tell him you're probably going to be the backup because if something were to happen to Watson, like, I don't know, he gets arrested for raping a trainer again, because that's not out of the realm of question considering the fact that he's up to 26, I believe now, allegations. If you have to suspend him again, it's not some transition like when you guys had Manziel, where it was like, cool, we have Johnny Manziel. Well, who's backing Johnny Manziel up? Brandon Weeden. Well, we traded Brandon Weeden at the deadline, now we have Brian Hoyer. And you're like, what? So you're going from a guy that is an option-based guy, and if something happens to him, you're going to Brian Hoyer. Yeah, you do know Brian Hoyer cannot run, right? You'd have to flip completely on the playbook. Now, in the case of Dorian Thompson-Robinson, if something were to happen, again, you'd have to monkey with the playbook, but it wouldn't be some weird jump where you're like, we don't know what we're doing. It's, okay, we're going to eliminate some of the big run or big spread plays, if you will. Right? Where his job is to just kind of maneuver around back there and find a guy. Where now, no, it's more dedicated to throwing the ball. Not that it matters because, I mean, have you looked at who they have in the backfield? They then took Cameron Mitchell, corner out of Northwestern, and then their last pick in the 6th round was Luke Whippler, who is the center for Ohio State. I actually thought Whippler would be off the board a lot sooner than that, but I think that's a really solid pick for you, considering the fact that you desperately need to work on your offensive line. You need to work on your defensive line as well, and I think that they did a good job of addressing that. Now we move on to the Dallas Cowgirls. The Dallas Cowgirls picked Maisie Smith first. He was their 26th overall pick. And then I'm going to cover both of these two guys because they both went to the same school. In round 2, they went with Luke Schoonmaker. Now, Luke Schoonmaker, I started cackling when they made that choice. I don't know why you thought you needed it. I don't know why you said goodbye. I say hello. But just honest to God, what were you doing? That is a hilarious choice. Not because of the player, just where you took him. This made me think immediately of, what's the name of the linebacker that Detroit took in the 2nd round the first year of the terrible draft that they had? I can't even think of his name. Anyway, kid from Hawaii, where you're like, you know that he had like a 6th round grade on him, right? And they're like, yeah, but we got told. And then, of course, once he got fired, you found out why he thought that. It turns out that, well, he did the only thing he'd ever been doing his entire career, which was, I'm going to call Bill and cry about how I don't know what to do. And he told me, that's a Patriots guy. And he went, cool, and took him. And now that's where that guy plays, the Patriots. Anyway, I thought that was a weird pick. And again, not that I think Luke Schoonmaker's bad. I just don't think that he was a 2nd-round value at all. Maisie Smith. I actually like that pick quite a bit. He's got some decent athleticism, a pretty good swim move. I thought 26 was a little high, but not going to criticize that pick. It's a position you needed. In the 3rd round, they took DeMarvion Overshow, linebacker from Texas. What I've seen from Overshown was I remember him as a safety. I did not see him much as a linebacker because I don't watch a lot of Texas football. But I did go back and, of course, look at tape on him, and I have to say that I actually like that pick quite a bit. I think he's going to have to learn a little bit more about playing in coverage and not chasing people. He has a tendency to kind of chase down people, which is great, but I also need to be able to stand back here and just cover a dude. Now, you hear me say he was a safety, and then you go, you're saying he has trouble with covering. Guys can shake him a little bit, but he's really good at chasing you down after you do that. So you go, you take the one thing, which is great, but I need you to work on also just being able to stick, which he can do. He just needs a little work on it. In round 4, they took Vilame Fehoko, defensive end from San Jose State. I thought that was a solid pick as well. You always need defensive ends, especially when you're the Cowboys, because they kind of don't have anybody outside of your one defensive end who is getting old. Round 5, they took Asim Richards, offensive tackle from North Carolina. In round 6, they took Eric Scott Jr. from Southern Miss. They took Deuce Vaughn in round 6 and Jalen Brooks, wide receiver from South Carolina. Deuce Vaughn, wide receiver, Kansas State. Or running back, sorry. Kansas State. I think he's going to play that receiving back. Anyway. Now, this is another one of those where you talk about juxtaposition. Had they taken this guy in like the 3rd round, you would have heard me going, what on earth are you doing? But in the 6th round, I think that's a really solid pick because although Deuce is little, he is really fast. I think he's going to get banged up a little bit. But, and again, I hate to always comp people to other Kansas State running backs. He's Darren Sproles. That's who he reminds me of, and that's his tape, is Darren Sproles, which is also where Darren Sproles played. I think if they know how to use that position properly, which, based on recent history, I'd say they do, and use him as Darren Sproles, that type of back where you're not the bell cow. You are the guy we put back here when we go 2-back, or I need you to roll out of 2-back into the slot, or kick return, or you're our number 2, if you will, back. And I think that that's a great position for him to be in. And if they use him that way, similar to how Darren Sproles was used, I think he could have a very solid career. My concern is he is little, and that sometimes means that guys like that can get hurt pretty easily. Don't believe me? Look at Darren Sproles. He did have some injuries that did delay his time on the field. Now we move to the Denver Broncos. Round 2, pick 32, they took Marvin Mims. I'm going to tell you the 2 things that I think about Marvin Mims. On one, I thought that was a solid pick because of his speed and his ability to catch. Now I'm going to knock the pick a little because then you look at the number of receivers they have and you kind of have to ask, how's he going to get on the field? Somebody's going to get cut. Somebody good is going to get cut. And you've got to ask what Marvin Mims is going to do about that. Round 3, pick 4, they took Drew Sanders, linebacker from Arkansas. I actually like that pick a lot more than people ESPN did a good job of taking a dump on the guy. NFL Network did a good job of talking him up a little bit. I think that he is a pretty solid linebacker. I hope his coverage skills can get a little better, but he's a very solid linebacker who can learn. The next pick in round 3, they took Riley Moss, corner from Iowa. I love that pick. I think Riley Moss is a very, very solid corner and a guy that can learn and become. I mean, dude lights people up hilariously. Like he is a monster when he hits people. I'm fascinated to see how that translates into Denver's defense, which usually likes guys who can really hit people and cover, which he does both pretty well. The next pick in the 6th round was J.L. Skinner, safety from Boise State. Again, if they want to go cover 3 and use him kind of as that hybrid, as well as being in back defense-wise, that is a very solid pick. J.L. Skinner, I believe, is the guy that's 6'2", right? Let me look. I think he's the safety that's tall. 6'4", that's what it is. He's 6'4". Which, again, long, tall, safety, corner, those types of positions is where you want that length. Same thing at linebacker. I will say, now that I'm looking at this, I know I said I'm not going to go through all the trades that happened. This one's kind of funny. It was Denver's pick. They traded it to Detroit, and then Detroit traded back to Denver. It's just a little funny. And then in the 7th round, they took Alex Forsyth from Oregon. I had Alex Forsyth going late round 3 on my big board after I did a little research of where I thought he would fall. I know there are times you heard me talking about how, like, round 5 or round 4, you should go take him. I had him a little later in round 4 once I did, some actual. So what's my big board? My big board is where I look at who's where. I have 2 types of boards. I have my one board where I have, if I'm this team, here's who I'm taking list, and then I have another one where it's guys where I think they should fall. I had him anywhere between late round 4, early round 5, and he went in round 7. So the last couple of years draft-wise have been weird because guys have fallen to where I wouldn't expect that. Now we cover the team that is closest to where I live, and that would be Detroit. And all I can say is, sweet mother of God, is this sad. In round 1, pick 12, they took Jahmyr Gibbs. Why? 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 Anyway, round 1, pick 18, they then took Jack Campbell. Why? Why? Then round 2, pick 3, 34th overall, they took Sam Laporta. Why? What are you doing? Round 2, pick 14, 45th overall, they took Brian Branch. Yay! Good job! Round 3, pick 5, 68th, Hendon Hooker. Weird. Okay. Weird. Round 3, pick 33, 96th overall, Broderick Martin. What are you doing? Round 5, pick 17, 152nd overall, Cody Sorsdale. Really, what are you doing? Round 7, pick 2, 219, Antoine Green. Oh, all right. I'm going to go over what my thoughts are in just a second. Notice how I said that. Oh, by the way, Cody Sorsdale is already being talked about being cut. Somebody, please explain to me what you were doing. I have no words. Jahmyr Gibbs. Now that we don't have, I just had his name a second ago, the kid from Georgia. Running back from Georgia, the kid that we just traded to the Eagles. Oh, what is his name? Oh, it was on the tip of my tongue and now it's gone. Hang on. DeAndre Swift. That was driving me nuts. I'm like, I can see his name. DeAndre Swift. Now that we don't have DeAndre Swift, now I don't mind the Jahmyr Gibbs pick as much. Before, when it was, hey, you have a guy that's exactly the same. And then you drafted the guy that's I just went, what are you doing? Well, we need a running back. You need defense, you numbskulls. Again, I'm trying to not curse. It was really hard there. I almost did, because I want to, badly. How would you grade the draft? People are like, we give it a B-. I give it an F. An F, filed under, what the are you doing? Jahmyr Gibbs. Why? Well, he was really fast, and he's the number one receiving back. I don't care. We've tried this experiment before with the guy you just traded. Swift. Have fast, bounce around, watch me shift, and catch out of the backfield. Running backs worked in Detroit. Nope. Nope. What has worked? Oh, power back, power back, power back, power back. Huh. It's almost like that's what works here. Especially considering the fact that our offensive line is usually only meh. Now it's decent, but usually it's only okay. Now I stand with my original, what I said later, which is that I don't mind the Jahmyr Gibbs pickup as much now that DeAndre Swift is gone. I just expect Jahmyr Gibbs to be injured by week 5. He might play some slot receiver. Cool. You know what you could have taken there? A slot receiver. Or any receiver. Because none of the receivers are off the board yet. I don't think. No. Because Seattle took Jackson Smith and Jigba. My brain went to the acronym first, and I was like, that's not it. Later. Anyway. And then pick 18, Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell. He was the fastest linebacker in the combine. Boopity boopity. You ever watch him play? He doesn't play that fast. I can tell you that for certain. He's really tall, so that's one nice thing. You know, Mama always said, try not to, if you can't say anything nice about somebody, don't say anything at all. He's really tall. That's about it. He's okay in coverage, not great. There were guys that were better in coverage that were still available. Run stuffing, he's fine. He's not very fast, so he's fine. I don't care for that pick at all. Sam Laporta, I hate that pick even more. At least Jack Campbell brings something to the board where you go, hey, with your height, you might be able to play some short zone and run stuff. Sam Laporta, what are you doing? Here's another reason why I hate that pick. What was pick number 35? I'll give you a hint. The better tight end. Michael Mayer. What are you doing? Michael Mayer is the obvious pick. And not because he went to Notre Dame and not biased. I went, he does everything Sam Laporta does, but 10 times better. Because he actually got thrown to where Sam Laporta didn't. You know why Sam Laporta didn't get thrown to? Because it's Iowa. But Iowa tight ends. I don't care. Iowa creates tight ends and boopity bippity bop. Okay, George Kittle, and I'll wait. Oh, well, you got to mention. No, I don't. Hawkinson? Why would I mention Hawkinson? He was fine. He wasn't that good. It's also why I didn't mind that you traded him. The other guy is not even with Denver anymore. He got traded to the Seahawks, and he doesn't really play either. So, I don't know. That was a monumental mistake. Then you took Brian Branch. I love that pick. Good. Now, they're saying he's going to play corner. I actually, well, since we also lost the guy, I was like, I think he should play safety. But, corner, fine, sold. Great pick. Good job. Hendon Hooker. Like I said, I thought it was a weird pick because it's only round 3, and you have another pick in round 3. But then again, I also said we desperately need a backup quarterback that's not terrible. And Hendon Hooker will have time to learn the playbook and sit and... Fine. I'm not going to argue with you. I love Hendon Hooker. He's a little older, but I love what he gave you on the field. Broderick Martin. What? Well, you said we need tackles. That's not what I meant. I meant, like, anybody that's actually good, not Broderick Martin, who's not good. That was just another headache pick. And then I'm just going to jump to Antoine Green. Antoine Green, really fast. well, quick. I shouldn't say fast. He's got some speed, but he's also really quick. Pretty solid hands. Needs some work on it. But I went, aha! Finally! You guys didn't make a bonehead decision. Now, people are going to say, when I mention Detroit, I say we. That's because it's my hometown team. I'm from Michigan, so I kind of have to pay attention to Detroit. Also because it's one of the few teams that's not blacked out constantly. I'm either watching them or I'm watching the Cowboys because they're America's game of the week. Even though no one other people in Dallas don't want to watch the Cowgirls. Then we jump to the Green Bay Packers, who were weird. With their first pick, they took Lucas Van Ness because why would you take a receiver when you need a receiver or a tight end or anything else? Nah, Lucas Van Ness. I'm hoping that he ends up playing as well as he did at Iowa. He was pretty solid. Round 2, they took Luke Musgraves. I actually like that pick a lot more than some people do, simply because I think Luke Musgraves is kind of underrated. Now they took a guy I think is better than him 1 round later. Round 2, pick 19, they took Jaden Reed. I'm not really high on Jaden Reed, but I like that he does have quickness, he's got some speed, and he helps you in kick return, something that you desperately need. Then they took Tucker Kraft. I have Tucker Kraft a lot higher on my board than I did Luke Musgrave. No offense to Luke Musgrave, but Tucker Kraft made some spectacular plays in college. I think that's a nice move. Shows that you're actually probably willing to run the ball a little bit more because you took tight ends. Then they took Colby Wooden, linebacker from Auburn. I'm curious to see how he does. That was the one kind of head scratch pick where you went, okay. I mean, you do need more help at linebacker, but I don't know if that's where you needed to go. Round 5, they took Sean Clifford. That pick I actually like quite a bit. I don't think Sean Clifford is a world beater or amazing or anything, but I think he could be a very solid number 2. What do you think you're doing? It's carpet. You're not really going to be able to maneuver it that much there, big guy. Huh? Big guy. I don't know. I'm a pout. Then they took Dontavian Wicks from Virginia, not West Virginia. I actually like that pick again. Also, let me pull up his stats. His measurables. There, Dontavian Wicks. He's going to wear number 13. He's 6'2". That's what I was looking for. Like, he's 6. Oh, sorry. On here they have 6'1". I think that is the dumbest thing. How much you want to bet he's like 6'1" and 3/4? He's 6'2". Decent size. Again, combine and if you watch any of his tape, he catches the ball pretty well. Then they took a pick that I think is underrated, but I do like, and that's Carl Brooks. Now, again, they have him listed as a linebacker. That will be a defensive end. Big fan of that one. And then they took Anders Carlson, kicker. Carrington Valentine, corner from Kentucky. Lou Nichols III out of Central Michigan. And then Anthony Johnson Jr. from Iowa State. I think there was one more pick, right? Yeah, Grant DuBose from Charlotte. I don't know much about Grant DuBose. It's hard to watch some of these smaller teams like Charlotte. Anthony Johnson Jr., if I remember correctly, he is taller. It's giving me a guy that is not who I'm thinking of. There we go. Real estate agent? No, not real estate agent. I'm looking for the football player. Yeah, he's 6 foot. There were only a couple of games for Iowa State I was able to watch. So I'll have to go back and watch some more tape on him, like looking for him. Before I was looking for somebody else. But I think that's a pretty decent pick. Again, you can never have too many safeties for certain teams. Green Bay being one of them. There's a couple teams where I can say that. Green Bay usually needs some safeties. Same thing with the Colts. The Colts rotate. So that's why they need more than one safety. But I think that's a pretty decent pick, especially later down the board. Never hurts to get a pretty solid safety down the board, especially because he can play some special teams if need be. Now we move on to the Texans, who made a great move, in my opinion. First pick was second overall. They took C.J. Stroud. Then they traded with Arizona for pick number 3 and took Will Anderson Jr. If I were a betting person and I had to take offensive rookies on offense and defense, sorry, I said offensive rookie. If I had to take rookie of the year on offense and defense, I would take C.J. Stroud and then Will Anderson, probably. Those are my favorites for offensive rookie of the year and defensive rookie of the year. Then in round 2, they took Juice Scruggs, center from Penn State. Not real high on Juice Scruggs, but the kid does battle, so I got to give you some credit there. Their next 2 picks I like a lot. Round 3, they took Tank Dell, and round 4, they took Dylan Horton. Tank Dell, not the biggest guy, but he's fast, and he's got pretty solid hands. I know I say that a lot, solid hands. Some of these guys don't. I'm going to get to one in a minute. And then Dylan Horton, who I think has a really solid frame, needs to work a little bit again with the hands, but he can blast through people, and that's something that, frankly, Houston could use some help with. In round 5, they took Henry To'oTo'o. I actually think that's another underrated pick, simply because I think To'oTo'o, despite the fact that he played at Alabama, if you watch his Tennessee tape, it's impressive. And then at Alabama, he kind of got lost, but that was because they have so many other linebackers that you kind of lose track of him. Round 6, pick 201st, they took Jarrett Patterson, center from Notre Dame. He can play guard. They have him marked in here as a center. He'll probably play guard. And they took Xavier Hutchinson, wide receiver from Iowa State, and then Brandon Hill, safety from Pitt. Those are 2 other picks I really like quite a bit. Xavier Hutchinson, if I were to comp him to somebody, you all know who I'd comp him to, a guy that's now with the Jets, was with Green Bay. And Brandon Hill is a pretty solid tackler out of Pitt. Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts took Anthony Richardson, 4th overall. You're going to continue here. I'm not high on Anthony Richardson. If he can learn to be a little better with his ball placement, then you're not going to hear very many complaints from me. They took Julius Brents in the 2nd round. Big fan of that. Very, very long, very tall corner. Something they need a lot of help with. Round 3, they took Josh Downs, wide receiver from I read where the draft pick came from. North Carolina. Very big on that one. Another guy, very elite route runner, and pretty solid hands as well. 4th round, they took Blake Freeland, offensive tackle from BYU. I love Blake Freeland. He is a very long offensive tackle. Why is that good? He's got very long arms. You're probably not going to get around him very easily because what he lacks in athleticism, being fast, he makes up for with having arms that can reach basically from me to my refrigerator. He has really long arms. Then they took, I am going to butcher your first name, I apologize, Adetomiwa? Adetomiwa? I think that's how you pronounce it. Adetomiwa. Adebawore, I think is how you pronounce his last name. Defensive tackle from Northwestern. Main reason why I think it's a good thing you took him is you can kind of rotate him inside and out a little bit. I like him better at D-tackle, but you can kind of flip him. Then they took Darius Rush, corner from South Carolina. Daniel Scott, safety from Cal. Will Mallory, tight end from Miami. Evan Hull, running back from Northwestern. Titus Leo, edge from Wagner. Jalen Jones, corner from Texas A&M, and then finished it with Jake Witt, offensive tackle from Northern Michigan University. Evan Hull, I actually like quite a bit. I think that he's going to be a pretty solid number 2, number 3 type, probably third down power back. He's going to be your job. And we move on to the team that they have to play twice a year, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. At least I'm pretty sure they play them twice a year, right? They play them in Tennessee, so yeah. Their first pick, 27th overall, they took Anton Harris, offensive tackle from Oklahoma. Another really big offensive tackle. Big fan of that one. They took Brenton Strange, who I thought was a strange pick, and I did not mean to say that way. It's simply that it was odd. But then you look at what they've got at tight end, and you understand why they did that. He's a better blocker, and that's something they need help with. They took Tank Bigsley in the third round out of Auburn. Not as high on that one. Round 4, they took Ventrell Miller. I like that pick a lot more than some people. He's got very good pass rushing skills, and he's a pretty solid guy in coverage. Again, coming out of Florida, he kind of needed to be. So they then took Tyler Lacey, defensive end out of Oklahoma State. Tyler Lacey is a pretty solid athlete. Again, runs through people, uses his hands a little better than some guys in this board, but in this draft on my board, but still needs some work. After that, it was Yazir Abdullah, linebacker from Louisville. Antonio Johnson, safety from Texas A&M, who I'm stunned was still available in round 5. Parker Washington, who was an underrated wide receiver from Penn State, who also pretty much catches everything. Christian Braswell, corner from Rutgers. Eric Hamlet, defensive back from Pitt. He'll probably play safety, would be my guess. Cooper Hodges, offensive tackle from Appalachian State. And then Raymond... Oh, sorry, there's one more pick after that. Then they took Raymond Vahasek, defensive tackle, North Carolina, and Derek Parrish, edge from Houston. I hate that it keeps doing that. It keeps putting it way down there. It's like, well, then I can't see who the next team is. Kansas State. Here we go. The Chiefs. Their first pick from Kansas State, which is why I said that, is probably my favorite pick of the draft. And I don't want to say it, but I called it. Felix Nduke Uzama, who is a powerful defensive end. Uses his hands extremely well. He was my number 2 edge on the entire board. Round 2, they took Rashee Rice. I think that this is an interesting pick. I want to see how he does against press coverage in their practices, and hopefully that he can teach him a little more, because in the I almost said Senior Bowl, and that wasn't it. It's the other one. No, it is a Senior Bowl. Sorry, I'm thinking of the collegiate game. He had a little trouble. He had a little trouble getting off press coverage, something I think he needs to work on. But if he can really get better at stripping off of that press coverage, he could be an elite weapon for them. Round 3, they took Wanya Morris, offensive tackle from Oklahoma. Wonder who he could be replacing. I'll give you a hint, another guy from Oklahoma. Round 4, they took Chamari Connor, defensive back, a corner. So they do have him listed as corner. Virginia Tech, I think he should play corner. Round 5, they took B.J. Thomas, edge from Stephen F. Austin. And then their next 2 picks, I think, were also underrated, although I think Detroit probably should have made this pick instead of trading it to Kansas. And that would be Keandre Coburn, defensive tackle from Texas, and Nick Jones, corner from Ball State. Nick Jones, compact size, not very big. Do not get in his way. He will light you up. He likes to hit people, and despite him being only 5'8", he can fly. I wouldn't want to get between him and the ball. You're probably going to end up on your rear end. Next, the Las Vegas Raiders, a dumpster fire organization. They did okay, actually. With the 7th overall pick, they took Tyree Wilson, edge from Texas Tech. I'm assuming he's going to replace Chandler Jones, because Chandler Jones is not getting any better. Now, pick 35. Oh, remember when I said that pick 34, Detroit moved up and got... They sat at 34 and they got a kid from Iowa? I wasn't kidding. Round 2, pick 4, 35th overall, they select Michael Mayer. Their best pick in the entire draft, if you don't mind me saying. Although weird that that's where he ended up. Best tight end in the draft, not debatable. He is the best tight end in the draft. Best tight end in all of college the last 2 years. I don't want to hear about the kid from Georgia. He doesn't do anything close to what Mike does. Also, he actually has to block, something that the kid at Georgia never has to do. And before I hear anybody whine about he rolls out and pass coverage, yeah, it's not hard when you're 240 pounds or something like that, going up against a 150-pound linebacker safety. That's not difficult. Round 3, pick 7, 70th overall, Byron Young, defensive tackle from Alabama. Round 3, they took Trey Tucker, wide receiver from Cincinnati. Round 4, they took Jacorian Bennett, corner from Maryland. I like that pick a lot. Round 4, pick 33, they took Aiden O'Connell. There's the head scratch pick that we all expect from this garbage franchise. Where you go, what? Yeah, you took just, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you except that what on earth. And I like Aiden O'Connell. I just didn't. A 4th round? Are you insane? Round 5, Chris Smith, the second safety from Georgia. I like him a lot. Very good in coverage, and he lights people up. Round 6, they took Amari Burney, linebacker from Florida, who I think, again, pretty solid linebacker, actually. And then round 7, they took Nesta Jade Silvera, defensive tackle, Arizona State. Now, I mentioned guys who don't use their hands very well. Here comes one right now. With the 21st overall pick, the Los Angeles Chargers selected Quentin I Drop Everything Johnson. Now, before people go, oh my goodness, did you watch any tape on him, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I watched more tape than you, I guarantee it. And if you watched any time he had to try and catch the ball with his hands, he dropped it. Anytime he had to catch the ball that was contested, he dropped it. Anytime he didn't have to catch the ball where he had to pin it against his body, he dropped it. I am very, very concerned. Now, I like his speed, I like his size. He needs to learn how to catch the friggin' ball. Round 2, pick 23, they took Tuli Tuipulotu. Yeah, I had to learn how to pronounce his name after they played us. Because, ESPN didn't say it enough. Meanwhile, they couldn't tell you who half the people on Notre Dame are. ESPN can suck it. Anyway, edge from USC. Ugh. Round 3, pick 22, they took Deion Henley, linebacker from Washington State. Of course, being a former receiver, I think that he's a really good linebacker. I want to see him a little more in coverage and tackling. Tackling's the big one. But overall, I think that was a very solid pick. And then to turn around, they then took the guy who has really good hands and is really fast from TCU in round 4, Darius Davis. Darius Davis is probably going to be mostly kick return at first, but I think that once you find out that Johnston can't catch anything, that you should put Darius Davis in his spot. In round 5, they took Jordan McFadden, guard from Clemson. Decent pick, not overly amazing, but fine. Round 6, they took Scott Matlock, defensive tackle from Boise State. Round 7, and their last pick, 239th overall, they took Max Duggan, cornerback from TCU. Now, quarterback TCU, normally I'd say me, because a lot of the quarterbacks that have come out of there have not been that great. Max Duggan, very solid backup. They're probably going to cut Easton Stick then, would be my assumption. Sorry, hiccups. He has a lot of athletic ability. His arm is the question. Now, people hear me say that and you go, well, what do you mean? His arm isn't amazing. It's fine. His athletic ability, he's athletic. He can run. So I could see that being a big deal. Now, if something were to happen to Herbert, it's going to be kind of funny because it's basically going to be his number 1 and number 4 weapon at TCU versus the NFL. So throwing to them, he should be relatively comfortable doing that from now on, one would assume. Always a fan of guys who come out of BYU, too, by the way. Or BYU, out of Boise. Boise's a very gritty program. Now we move on to the Rams. Their first pick, round 2, pick 36, they took Steve Avila, guard for TCU. I like that pick a lot. Very solid guard. He was my number 2 guard on my board. Because I believe he was 5th, was my boy from Notre Dame, because I have him as that center/guard, so I think he was 5th in guard and 3rd in center, 3rd or 4th in center, something like that. Round 3, pick 14, 77th overall, they take Byron Young, edge Tennessee. Round 3, they take Kobe Turner, defensive tackle from Wake Forest. Round 4, they take Stetson Bennett, quarterback from Georgia. Round 5, they take Nick Hampton, edge from Appalachian State. Then they take Warren McClendon, tackle from Georgia. Davis Allen, tight end from Clemson. Puka Nakua, wide receiver from BYU. Travius Hodges Tomlinson, corner from TCU. O'Shawn Mathis, edge from Nebraska. And Zach Evans, running back from Mississippi, before they then turn around and take Ethan Evans, punter from Wingate, which was weird. And Jason Taylor II, and then Deshaun Johnson, defensive end from Toledo. Jason Taylor II played safety at Oklahoma State. Now, I say the Wingate one was weird because most guys don't come out of Wingate, because, well, it's not really a football college. Basketball, yes. Football, not so much. But from what little tape I've been allowed to see, because, again, Wingate doesn't really have any, that kid can really boom some punts. So, yay. Now, Stetson Bennett, that one, a lot of people have had some question marks about, why on earth do they take him there? I think the big thing with that is simple. You desperately need somebody to back up and possibly take the reins from Matt Stafford. And I think Stetson Bennett can do that. Now, allegedly, he didn't graduate, which is weird after being in school for 50 years. But, whatever. Kids today don't graduate anyway, so it's not like it really matters. Because, you only went to a university for free, so why would you want to graduate? In the not-for-long league. Now we move to Miami, who didn't have a lot of picks, but I think they made quite a bit of a jump with those picks. And that is round 2, pick 51. Their first pick, they took Cam Smith, corner from South Carolina. They then took Devon Achane, running back from Texas A&M, Elijah Higgins, wide receiver from Stanford, and Ryan Hayes, offensive tackle from Michigan. Nothing that really blows your skirt up, nothing that makes you go, oh my god, with those picks, but several very solid choices. Cam Smith's probably the crown jewel of that, because he's probably going to be the guy that replaces the guy from Baylor. I'm blanking on his name too. Tall corner. Anyway. Now I move on to Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings took Jordan Addison, 23rd overall. I kind of like this pick, actually. I think it gives you a really good number 2 weapon to Justin Jefferson. Then the next pick was in round 3, where they took Mekhi Blackman, corner from UCLA. Pretty decent man coverage guy. I'd like to see a little more out of him. Then they took Jay Ward, corner from LSU. They took, I'm going to butcher his name, I believe it's Yaquilin Roy, defensive tackle, LSU. They took Jaron Hall, which is hilarious, out of BYU, a guy that is bad. And then Dwayne McBride, who will probably be like the number 3 running back. The New England Cheaters, otherwise known as the Patriots. They took Christian Gonzalez, 17th overall. That's something I thought Detroit would do, considering the fact that, it's only a position that you need. Now, before people tell me they moved a lot of people around there, a lot of those guys are there on one-year contracts, so. They then took Keon White, who I liked a lot. The kid can use his hands decently. He's a very, very big edge rusher. I like him a lot. They then took Marty Mapu, linebacker from Sacramento State. Jake Andrews, center from Troy. Chad Ryland, kicker from Maryland. Sade, I think is how you pronounce his first name. I believe it's So. From Eastern Michigan, he's a guard. Antonio Mafi, guard UCLA. Keyshawn Butte, wide receiver from LSU. And then Bryce Behringer from Michigan State, before moving on to Demario Douglas, wide receiver from Liberty. Amir Speed, DB from Michigan State. Isaiah Bolden, corner from Jackson State. Of those, Douglas I like quite a bit. Butte I think is hilarious, because remember the whole reason he was thinking about coming out in the first place was because, I think I'm a round 2 talent. Then he realized, no, I'm not, so I should go back to school. And then he realized, hey, I probably shouldn't be involving myself in the things that he was involving himself in, and so, I guess I'll come out. Or as it was reported, allegedly, which was not so much that, hey, I guess I'll leave and go to the draft. It was, oh, I'm not allowed back. I guess I'll go to the draft. We're not going to comment on that too much because a lot of it's rumor-based, and I don't like doing that. Now we move on to the Saints. With Brian Brzee, their first round pick, number 29th overall, I don't like it. I think Brzee is all hype, and he doesn't use his hands very well. But in this system, when you want someone to just hold up a guard and stay there, I think he'll fit the system. I'm just not a huge fan of his. Round 2, pick 9, 40th overall, they take Isaiah Foskey, defensive end, Notre Dame. Round 3, they take Keandre Miller, running back TCU. I love that pick, actually. I think he's a really solid back. Round 4, they take Nick Saldiveri, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, guard, Old Dominion. Jake Haener, quarterback for Fresno State. We'll have a joke about him in a second. Jordan Howden, safety from Minnesota. And then I drop everything, Perry from Wake Forest. Jake Haener. When you look at Jake Haener and you pulled up a picture of him and Derek Carr, you wouldn't be sure which one's which because they look alike. It's a little funny. A.T. Perry, really tall, but Jesus, he drops everything. Another guy that doesn't use his hands. If he could use his hands, oh my goodness, because he's really tall. Now we move on to the Giants. The Giants, with their 24th pick, 24th overall, is the first round pick. They took Deonte Banks, corner from Maryland, my number 2 corner on most of my boards. Round 2, pick 26, they took John Michael Schmidt, center from Minnesota, great pick. Round 3, they took Jalen Hyatt, really fast and relatively good-sized wide receiver for Tennessee. Eric Gray, running back from Oklahoma. Trey Hawkins, the third corner from Old Dominion. Jordan Riley, defensive tackle from Oregon. And Jarvis Owens, safety from Houston. Of that, I love the Eric Gray pick, and I love the Jalen Hyatt pick. Those 2 picks are definitely going to help your offense out a lot. No, I'm not going to comment on the rumors I'm hearing about Hyatt, because we don't know. Next, we move on to the Jets, the team that shares the stadium with the Giants in New Jersey, which means that neither of you should be able to call yourselves New York. The 15th overall pick, they took Will McDonald, the 4th from Iowa State. They then took Joe Tippmann, center from Wisconsin. Carter Warren, offensive tackle from Pittsburgh. Israel Abanikanda, running back from Pittsburgh. Zaire Barnes, linebacker from Western Michigan. Jarek Bernard-Converse, corner from LSU. And Zach Kuntz, tight end from Old Dominion. Yes, that's how you pronounce it. No, it's not pronounced the way you think it is by the way it's spelled. It's Kuntz. Not the other way. Just like how apparently the Green Bay's GM is Gutekunst, not Gute. You get the point. And if you don't, well, then that's just, well, you'll figure it out eventually. Now we move on to the Eagles. The Eagles, who basically, let me just say this. Who'd they take? Georgia, Alabama, Illinois, Georgia. And then they traded for a guy from Georgia. Round 1, pick 9, they take Jalen Carter, defensive tackle from Georgia, because you don't have enough Georgia guys on your team. Round 1, pick 30, they take Nolan Smith. That one was the one that I was most concerned about, because I'm watching guys come off the board, and I'm going, Nolan Smith? Anybody? Anybody want to take Nolan Smith? Going once? Going twice? Oh, look, Green Bay's up. They need an edge/linebacker. Nolan Smith. No, that's not who you're taking? Okay. And then as it got closer to the Eagles, you're just going, there's no way this is going to happen again. Because that's what happened last year. Remember? Oh, linebacker from Georgia. Amazing linebacker. Oh, my goodness. And they're like, he's going to fall to the Eagles, isn't he? Yep. Then they took Tyler Steen, tackle. They said he's probably going to actually play guard first out of Alabama. Sidney Brown, safety from Illinois. Love that pick. Kaylee Ringo, corner from Georgia. I know, we're all stunned by that one. Tanner McKee. That is probably the funniest pick of the entire draft. And then Mario Ojomo, defensive tackle from Texas. Tanner McKee, quarterback from Stanford. Yeah, I don't get that one. He's just a weird... He's an anomaly. Let's just put it that way. He's an anomaly. He doesn't do anything that's that great. I don't know why he got drafted. Like, I genuinely scratched my head. That was one of those where I kind of expected DTR to come off the board there, and that's not what happened. Now we move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. With their first pick, they took Broderick Jones, offensive tackle from Georgia. Now, pick 32, which they traded with for Chicago. They took Joey Porter Jr. because that's what happens when you let really good players just fall to Pittsburgh. They then took Keanu Benton, defensive tackle from Wisconsin. I was hoping for that. They then took Darnell Washington from Georgia, which was interesting because they didn't think that was that big of a need for them, but okay, not going to complain. They then took Nick Herbig in the 4th round by Wisconsin, Corey Trice, corner from Purdue, and Spencer Anderson, guard from Maryland. '49ers took 3rd round, their first pick, Jair Brown, safety from Penn State. And they took Jake Moody because we have to be weird. Kicker out of Michigan. I did not expect him to go in the 3rd round. Then in the next round, they took Cameron Latu. Again, it's kind of like I said that would happen. Daryl Luter, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, junior, corner from South Alabama. Robert Beal Jr., edge from Georgia. D. Winters, linebacker from TCU. Braden Willis, tackle, or tight end. He'll probably actually play more like a fullback type situation. Oklahoma. Ronnie Bell, wide receiver, Michigan. And Jalen Graham, linebacker from Purdue. Ronnie Bell is probably the pick I'm most intrigued by there. Simply because, one, I didn't expect him to fall to round 7. I know he's coming off of a year before that where he had a very catastrophic injury, but still, didn't expect him to go to the Niners. I didn't see that happening. I wish him nothing but the best. Now we go on to Seattle with their quagmire and just pure weirdness of the first pick. I mean, not weird when you realize what that guy does, but it was weird because that wasn't where we thought they'd go. Round 1, pick 5, they go with Devin Witherspoon, corner from Illinois. Which is why I think Detroit ended up doing what they were doing. I did not see that happening. I thought they would go maybe defensive line or linebacker, but nope, they went with Devin Witherspoon. Then they took Jackson Smith and Jigba, Derek Hall. Illinois, Jackson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State. Derek Hall is a linebacker / edge from Auburn. Zach Charbonnet, running back from UCLA, the guy I wanted Detroit to take. Anthony Bradford, guard from LSU. Cameron Young, defensive tackle from Mississippi State. Mike Morris, defensive end from Michigan. Oluwatimi, center from Michigan. Jarek Reed, safety from New Mexico. And Kenny McIntosh, running back from Georgia. Now, not only did they take 2 running backs, which was really weird because now you have like 9 running backs, but I thought it was weird that you took Kenny McIntosh at all because kind of expected him to go right around where he went, round 6 or 7, but I also had him as a classified possible UDFA. Zach Charbonnet is the most shocking pick for me on that one because, well, 1, he does a lot of things you guys like, but 2, I was hoping that, Detroit would try and take him, seeing as how he's a power back. Now we go to the Bucs. Tampa Bay Bucs. With their first round pick, 19th overall, they took Kalijah Cansey, defensive tackle, Pittsburgh. Then they went with Cody Mauch, offensive tackle. He'll probably actually play guard, North Dakota State. Yaya Diaby, defensive end / linebacker from Louisville. Savassier Dennis, linebacker from Pittsburgh. Payne Durham, tight end from Purdue. Josh Hayes, defensive back from Kansas State. Trey Palmer, wide receiver from Nebraska, and Jose Ramirez, edge from Eastern Michigan. Of those, Trey Palmer will be an interesting see what they do with him. Payne Durham's actually underrated in my opinion, and I love Savassier Dennis. The kid likes to light people up, so that should be interesting to see how he fits into what they want to do. Now I move on to the Tennessee Titans. The Titans, with their first pick, 11th overall, took Peter Skoronski. Tackle, I think, should be a guard, Northwestern. Their second pick, round 2, pick 2, they traded up to get there. They take Will Levis, quarterback out of Kentucky. Then they took Tyjae Spears, running back from Tulane. I've heard that he's got some knee soreness, which is a shame because I think he's very, very good. Josh Wiley, tight end from Cincinnati. Jalen Duncan, tackle from Maryland, who I think is underrated, and then Colton Dowell, wide receiver from Tennessee Martin. The Washington Commies, who are going to have to change their name again from what I'm hearing. For round 1, pick 16, took Emmanuel Forbes. That was a weird pick. I like Emmanuel Forbes, just thought it was weird that they took him there. Round 2, they took Jartavius Martin, corner from Illinois. Then they took Ricky Stormberg, center from Arkansas. Braden Daniels, guard from Utah. KJ Henry, defensive end. Guard. I don't know why I read that. I read his name and then looked up instead of down. Edge from Clemson. Chris Rodriguez Jr., running back from Kentucky. Andre Jones, edge from Louisiana. My top 2 picks for this are obviously going to be KJ Henry, who I think is a solid edge. I didn't think he got used enough in Clemson, because when he was on the field, he was actually pretty solid. And Braden Daniels, who I think is a underrated guard from Utah. That's all of the picks. I believe Washington's last. I'm just double checking. Yeah, because it's in alphabetical order. My brain didn't work that way because I always forget it's in alphabetical order. Undrafted guys, feel free to look that up if you want for your team. I don't feel like going through the 9 million names. But other than that, that's pretty much all that happened. I mean, I don't know who won in the XFL because I forgot it was on. But yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to the NFL. Training camp's going on right now. We're moving closer and closer to college football, which cannot get here fast enough, nor can the month of November when it finally cools off, or October if it finally cools off in October. Sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Spread kindness and love. Try not to be a dick. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm going to try to do this more often. We're not always going to talk about football. We're also going to talk about just things that are going on. But yeah, in the meantime, like I said, try to be kind. It's not that hard to not be a dick. And that'll do it. Bye.